Bisa once thought she had found the perfect life. She married Ober, a man she believed would love and protect her forever. In the beginning, everything felt like a dream. They laughed together, danced in their small living room, and talked about all the beautiful plans they had for the future. Bisa would often smile to herself, feeling lucky that she had found someone who made her heart so full. She imagined growing old with him, raising a happy family, and building a life filled with love. But slowly, little by little, the dream started to crack. Ober began to change in ways Bisa couldn't understand. His sweet words turned into harsh ones. His warm smiles became cold stares. The man who once held her close at night now raised his voice over small things. And then it got worse. His anger didn't stay in his words. It found its way into his hands. At first, it was small pushes, a tight grip on her arm. Bisa wanted to believe it was just stress, that he didn't mean it. She told herself it would pass, that the man she loved was still somewhere inside him. Then one day, Bisa found out she was pregnant, her heart filled with hope. She thought, maybe now Ober would change. Maybe knowing a little life was growing inside her would bring back the gentle man she married. She prayed day and night, holding her stomach, whispering promises to her unborn child that everything would be okay. But instead of getting better, things grew worse. Ober's anger became even more dangerous. His voice roared through the house like a storm, and his hands showed no mercy. Bisa felt more alone than ever. The man she once trusted more than anyone was now the one she feared the most. Her beautiful dream of a happy family was slipping away, turning into a nightmare she couldn't wake up from. Each day she held on to hope a little less, realizing that love alone was not enough to heal the darkness that had taken over Ober's heart. Still, deep inside, she kept wishing, even if it hurt, that one day somehow he would see the damage he was causing before it was too late. But fate had other plans, plans that would soon shake both their lives forever. At first, it was just the shouting, loud, angry words that filled the air and made Bisa's heart race. Every argument felt sharper than the last, like each word was cutting her deeper than any knife could. The walls of their small home could not hide the noise. Neighbors would stop what they were doing and listen. They heard the yelling, the sound of things breaking, the painful silence that followed. Some would shake their heads sadly. Some would whisper behind closed doors. Everyone knew something was wrong, but no one dared to step in. Bisa did everything she could to hide the truth. She wore long sleeves to cover the bruises on her arms. She smiled when she went to the market, even when it hurt to move her face. She told herself that if she just stayed quiet, if she just loved Ober a little more, everything would get better. She blamed it on stress. Maybe it was the pressure of work, of life. Maybe Ober was just going through a hard time. Maybe he didn't mean it. Bisa held on to any excuse she could find because the real reason was too painful to admit. At night, when she was alone, she would sit by the window and cry softly so no one would hear. She missed the man who used to make her laugh, the man who used to dance with her in the kitchen. She wondered where he had gone and why he had been replaced by someone so cold, so cruel. Deep in her heart, she knew the truth. Ober wasn't lost. He had changed. And no matter how much she wished or prayed, the man she married was not coming back. Still, Bisa refused to give up hope. She thought about the baby growing inside her and promised herself she would stay strong. Maybe Ober just needed time. Maybe the old Ober would come back when he held their child in his arms. She clung to that small hope, even as fear grew heavier inside her. Every harsh word, every angry shove made it harder to believe. But Bisa wasn't ready to give up yet. She loved him too much. Or maybe she was just too scared to face life without him. The whispers in the walls grew louder, not just from the neighbors, but inside her own mind. They told her the truth she didn't want to hear, that love shouldn't hurt like this, that no excuse could wash away the pain, that the man who once promised to protect her was now the one she needed protection from. But Bisa wasn't ready to listen. Not yet. She still had hope, a hope that was breaking, piece by piece. Every time Ober raised his voice, or worse, his hand, and deep inside, she knew the worst was still to come. It was a cold and rainy night when everything finally broke apart. The fight started over something so small, just dinner. Bisa had cooked late because she wasn't feeling well. She thought Ober would understand, but he didn't. His face twisted with anger, and before she could even explain, he snapped. In one fast, violent moment, Ober shoved her hard. Bisa stumbled backward and slammed into the edge of the table. A sharp pain shot through her body, but all she could think about was the baby inside her. She wrapped her arms around her belly, trying desperately to protect the tiny life growing there. Tears filled her eyes as she begged him to stop, but Ober wasn't the man she once loved anymore. His rage had blinded him completely. He didn't see her fear. He didn't hear her cries. His hands kept hitting her, each blow harder than the last. Bisa tried to scream for help, but her voice was too weak. Her world was spinning. She felt like she was drowning in pain and fear. She wanted to run, to hide, to do anything to save her baby, but her body wouldn't move the way she wanted. Finally, it ended. Ober stepped back, breathing heavily, his eyes cold and empty. He didn't rush to help her. He didn't even look at her with regret. He simply stormed out of the house, slamming the door behind him like she was nothing. Nothing but a broken thing left lying on the cold, hard floor. Bisa lay there, shaking, barely able to breathe. The room felt too quiet now, except for the sound of the rain hitting the windows. Every part of her body ached. She touched her belly and cried, not knowing if her baby was still safe. She wanted to scream, but no sound came out. She was too weak, too broken. In that terrible moment, Bisa realized something she had tried to ignore for so long. Ober didn't love her anymore. Maybe he never really did. And now, because she had stayed and hoped for too long, she and her baby might pay the price. She didn't know what would happen next. She didn't know if she had the strength to get up. But lying there, alone and hurt, Bisa made a silent promise to herself and to her baby. If they survived this night, she would never let Ober hurt them again. No matter what it took, she would find a way out, a way to live, a way to protect the little life she still held on to. Hours slipped away like a bad dream. The house was silent, too silent. Outside, the rain kept falling, and inside, Bisa lay still on the cold floor. It wasn't until much later that a worried neighbor, who hadn't heard anything for a long time, decided something was wrong. He ran to the door, called out for Bisa, but there was no answer. Fear gripped him, and with all his strength, he broke the door open. What he saw inside made his heart stop. Bisa was lying there, not moving, her body bruised and broken. Without wasting a second, he called for help. In no time, an ambulance arrived, and they rushed her to the hospital. She was unconscious, her face pale, her breathing shallow. It looked bad, very bad. The doctors knew they had no time to lose. All through the night, the hospital lights burned bright. Doctors and nurses worked around her, their hands moving quickly, fighting to save her life. Machines beeped loudly, measuring every small sign that Bisa was still holding on. But it wasn't just her they were fighting for. There was another tiny, fragile life inside her, her baby. They put a monitor on her belly and searched for a heartbeat. For a terrifying moment, there was nothing but silence. Then, faint and soft, like a whisper, they heard it. A tiny heartbeat still fighting, still alive. It was weak, but it was there. Everyone in the room became even more serious. It was no longer just about saving one life. It was about saving two. The doctors moved faster, carefully doing everything they could to keep both Bisa and her baby alive. Every second mattered. The nurses whispered prayers under their breath. The air was thick with tension and fear. Bisa's body had taken so much damage. Her pulse was weak, and her breathing came in short, painful gasps. The doctors gave her oxygen, medicine, and did everything they could to stop the bleeding. It felt like a race against death itself. In those hours, strangers, people who didn't even know Bisa, fought with all their hearts to bring her back. Every little movement she made, every tiny improvement, gave them hope. But it was still a battle they could lose at any moment. No one knew what would happen. No one knew if Bisa would open her eyes again. No one knew if the small life inside her would make it through the night. But everyone fought like it mattered, because it did. As the clock kept ticking, the hospital room stayed filled with hope, fear, and determination. Everyone was holding their breath, praying for a miracle. They didn't want this story to end in pain. They wanted it to end with life. They wanted Bisa and her baby to survive. While Bisa was fighting for her life in the hospital, Ober was living as if nothing had happened. He sat with his friends, laughing loudly, making jokes like he had no care in the world. When they asked about Bisa, he just shrugged and said she was too dramatic. In his mind, it was all her fault. He told them she was just looking for attention, that she would cry a little, stay angry for a few days, and then come back to him, like she always did. Ober believed he had complete control over her. He thought Bisa couldn't survive without him. He didn't see anything wrong with what he had done. To him, it was just another fight. He had no idea how badly he had hurt her. He didn't know, or maybe he didn't care, that this time, things were different. This time, the damage he caused was deep, dangerous, and could not be undone. Even when neighbors whispered about how serious it was, even when he heard that an ambulance had come to his house, Ober didn't move. He didn't rush to the hospital. He didn't ask if Bisa was okay. He just laughed it off, saying she was probably pretending. His pride and arrogance blinded him completely. Ober spent his days drinking, partying, and living like he had no responsibilities. He didn't even check his phone properly. He was so sure that Bisa would get tired of the hospital, get tired of being alone, and would come back home, begging for his forgiveness. That's how it had always been before. Why would this time be any different? But this time, it was different. Very different. It wasn't until he received a phone call that reality finally hit him. It was a short call, but the words were enough to make his hands shake. The person on the other end didn't shout, didn't scream. They simply said that Bisa was fighting for her life, and so was his child. For the first time, Ober's smile faded. His friends noticed his face turn pale. His hands started to tremble, and suddenly, the room around him didn't feel so loud or happy anymore. Reality hit him hard, like a slap across the face. He had thought he could hurt Bisa again and again, without any real consequences. He had thought she would always come back, always forgive, always love him no matter what. But now, for the first time, Ober realized he might have destroyed everything, not just Bisa's trust, not just their love, but their future too. And now, no matter how fast he ran, no matter how many times he apologized, he could not undo the damage he had caused. Some things, once broken, can never be fixed. And Ober was about to find out just how true that was. Ober walked into the hospital like he didn't care. His face was hard, his steps full of pride. He was angry that someone had even called him. In his mind, this was just a waste of time. He thought he would walk in, find Bisa sitting up, maybe crying a little, and then everything would go back to normal. That's what he expected. That's what always happened before. But the moment he entered the doctor's office, something felt different. The room was cold, silent. The doctor didn't smile or greet him. He just looked at Ober with serious eyes. Ober shifted uncomfortably, feeling the weight of the silence pressing down on him. He didn't like it, not one bit. Then the doctor spoke. His voice was low, heavy with anger and sadness. "Bisa survived," he said. For a second, Ober wanted to smirk, as if to say, "See, I knew it." But before he could even move his mouth, the doctor's next words hit him like a stone. "But you didn't just hurt your wife, you damaged your own bloodline." Ober blinked, confused. What did that even mean? He opened his mouth to ask, but the doctor didn't give him the chance. His voice became even colder, sharper. "She was carrying twins," the doctor said slowly, every word cutting deeper than a knife. "You took away one of them." The words echoed in Ober's ears. Twins. She'd been carrying twins. His children. 2 tiny lives. 2 tiny hearts beating under her chest. And because of his own hands, his own uncontrollable anger, one of them was gone forever. The world around Ober seemed to spin. He grabbed the edge of the desk to steady himself, but it didn't help. It felt like the ground under his feet had disappeared, like he was falling into a dark, endless hole. He tried to speak, but no words came out. His throat was dry. His heart pounded painfully against his chest. The doctor stared at him, no sympathy in his eyes, only judgment. "This is what you did," the doctor said quietly. "You didn't just hurt her body. You broke something sacred. You destroyed a life that didn't even get the chance to live." Ober's mind raced. Memories of all the times he had shouted, hit, blamed. Bisa flashed before his eyes. He had thought she was overreacting. He had thought she would always come back. He had thought he was a man by controlling her with fear. Now, standing there, he realized he was not a man at all. He was a monster. And the price of his actions was a piece of his own future. A child who would never laugh, never cry, never call him father. For the first time in his life, Ober felt real fear, real regret, real loss. But it was too late. Some mistakes can never be fixed. Some losses can never be undone. And Ober had just learned that lesson in the most painful way possible. Ober stood there frozen, unable to breathe properly. His legs started shaking, and without even thinking, he dropped into the nearest chair. His chest rose and fell heavily, like he had just run a long, hard race, but still couldn't catch his breath. Sweat poured down his forehead, blurring his vision, but he didn't wipe it away. He couldn't even move. For so long, Ober thought he was strong. He thought being loud, being angry, being feared made him powerful. He believed that shouting at Bisa, controlling her and showing his strength, made him the real man of the house. That's what he had told himself every time he raised his voice, every time his hands left marks on her skin. He had believed it so deeply that he never once stopped to question it. But now, sitting there in that cold hospital office, he finally saw the truth. He wasn't strong. He wasn't a man. He was a coward, a weak, broken man who had taken his pain and fear out on the one person who loved him the most. And because of that, he had destroyed everything good in his life with his own hands. The truth crashed down on him, wave after wave, leaving him gasping for air. He didn't just hurt Bisa's body. He didn't just make her cry. He didn't just cause bruises and scars. No, he had destroyed something much deeper. He had broken her trust. He had crushed her spirit. He had killed the dream they had once built together. And worst of all, he had ended the life of a child who never even got the chance to live. Ober pressed his hands against his face, trying to hide from the truth, but there was nowhere to run. His mind replayed every cruel word, every slap, every moment he chose anger instead of love. Each memory stabbed him deeper than the last. The strong man he thought he was gone. All that was left was a scared, broken fool sitting in a chair, drowning in the wreckage he had created. He wanted to scream. He wanted to turn back time. He wanted to beg Bisa for forgiveness, to somehow fix everything. But deep down, he knew some things are too broken to ever be fixed. Some damage is forever. And Ober, the man who once laughed at pain, who once thought he could control everything, realized that he was now the one powerless, helpless, alone. The collapse wasn't loud, it wasn't violent. It was silent, painful, and slow. It happened deep inside him, tearing him apart piece by piece. And for the first time in his life, Ober tasted the real meaning of regret. A regret so heavy, he knew he would carry it for the rest of his miserable life. Weeks later, after a long, painful battle, Bisa finally opened her eyes in the hospital. She was weak, her body still hurting, but she was alive. She had survived the worst night of her life. The nurses smiled when they saw her awake, but Bisa didn't smile back. She felt heavy inside, like she was carrying the weight of everything that had happened. But deep down, there was a small light burning, a light that whispered, "You are still here." She didn't ask about Ober. She didn't cry for him, not even once. It was like a door had closed inside her heart, and this time, it would never open again. She didn't care where he was or what he was doing. All her love, all her attention, was now for the tiny heartbeat that had survived inside her, her baby, the little soul who had fought just as hard as she had. Bisa knew she couldn't waste her strength on a man who had tried to destroy her. She had to be strong for the life that was depending on her now. She held her hand over her stomach and promised, "I will protect you. I will never let anyone hurt you." Ober, of course, tried to come back. He showed up with flowers, gifts, fake tears in his eyes. He stood at her hospital door with big promises, sweet words, and a face full of fake sorrow. He begged her to forgive him. He said he had changed, that he was sorry, that he missed her. But Bisa saw it clearly now. She saw the lies behind his pretty words. She saw the selfishness in his eyes. He didn't love her. He loved the control he had lost. He missed the woman he could beat down, not the woman who was strong enough to leave him. This time, Bisa didn't stay silent. She didn't smile. She didn't cry. She didn't argue. She simply turned her face away, refusing to give him even a single word. Her silence was louder than any scream. It was a wall he could never climb over. Bisa's strength wasn't loud or angry. It was calm, powerful, and unbreakable. She had survived the worst pain a heart could feel. She had lost a piece of herself, but she was still standing. And now, she would rise even higher, not for Ober, not for revenge, but for herself and the little life growing inside her. Ober realized too late that he could no longer reach her. Bisa had moved beyond his grasp. His flowers wilted, his promises fell flat. His fake tears dried up, because Bisa had found something he could never destroy again, her silent, unstoppable strength. Bisa knew she couldn't just walk away and stay silent. She had to stand up, not just for herself, but for her baby too. So, with all the strength she had left, she pressed charges against Ober. No more hiding, no more excuses. She was ready to fight for justice. When the day of the court hearing came, Ober, who once thought he was strong and powerful, stood in front of the judge, looking small and scared. His hands shook. His eyes darted around the room, searching for someone to save him. But there was no one. The world finally saw him for what he truly was. Not a strong man, not a husband, but a coward who had hurt the very person he was supposed to protect and love. People from the community came to support Bisa. Her family stood beside her, holding her hand and reminding her she was not alone. Everyone who once whispered and wondered now cheered for her bravery. They admired how she stood tall, even after all the pain she had suffered. The court listened to her story, and Ober could not escape the truth. He faced the punishment he deserved, and as the judge announced the verdict, Bisa felt a weight lift off her chest. It was finally over. She could finally breathe again. But Bisa didn't just stop at getting justice. She wanted to build a better life for herself and her child. She used the little savings she had and started a small business. It wasn't easy, but every day she worked with love and hope. Slowly, her shop grew. Customers loved her kindness, her honesty, and her courage. Bisa poured her heart into raising her child too. She made sure her baby knew they were safe, loved, and protected. Every smile, every little laugh from her child reminded her why she fought so hard to survive. She taught her child about strength, kindness, and never accepting mistreatment from anyone. For the first time in a very long while, Bisa smiled, a real, bright, and honest smile. She laughed with her friends. She danced without fear. Her eyes, once full of pain, now sparkled with hope and dreams. Bisa's life wasn't perfect, but it was real, and it was hers. She had turned her pain into power, her heartbreak into a new beginning. She was no longer the woman who waited for someone to save her. She had saved herself. And Ober, he became nothing but a sad memory, a warning from the past. While he faded into the background, Bisa and her child built a beautiful life, full of love, strength, and endless possibilities. In the cold, dark cell that was now his home, Ober's mind never stopped replaying the doctor's words. They echoed in his head, each night, over and over. "You took away one of your own." Those words were a constant reminder of the monstrous thing he had done. The rage he couldn't control had cost him everything: his wife, his child, his freedom. He had thought he was the one in control, the one who held all the power. But in the end, it was his anger that had destroyed him. Every day, Ober sat in his cell, haunted by the silence and the emptiness of the life he had left behind. No one came to visit him. No one cared to check on him. His world had crumbled, and there was no one left to blame but himself. He had destroyed the very family he once vowed to protect, and now there was nothing left but his endless regret. Meanwhile, Bisa's life had completely transformed. She wasn't the broken woman who once feared her husband. She had rebuilt herself piece by piece, and now she thrived, surrounded by love, respect, and the support of a community that cared for her. Bisa flourished. She had found joy again, in ways she never thought possible after all the pain she had endured. Every day was a celebration of life, and every milestone her child reached was a triumph, not just for her child, but for herself too. The first laugh, the first step, the first word, all these moments were filled with meaning, because Bisa knew she had fought for them. She had fought for her child's safety, for their future, and for her own dignity. And as her child grew, so did the strength of their bond. They shared laughter, dreams, and memories, things Ober would never get to experience. Bisa's child would never know the kind of fear she once felt, nor would they ever face the cruelty of a man who couldn't see beyond his own rage. Every giggle, every milestone was a reminder of what she had fought so hard to protect. Ober's regret was endless, while Bisa's life was filled with hope and love. The life she had lost to him was now far behind her, replaced by something far greater. Ober had faded into a forgotten past, his name whispered in silence by the few who remembered. And Bisa? She had risen from the ashes, stronger than ever, with a future full of promise and the kind of love she had always deserved.